Hello there. You're in the Beat Sessions, the place for all things music and where we do the listening for you. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Hope you all had an outstanding weekend. It's great to be back in the studio with all of you. For those of you who have been following the channel for a bit, you know that I manage a bar here with a buddy in Tucson, Arizona, and all of our bartenders chose to go on vacation over the weekend. So we were left with a pretty skeleton crew to hold things down, but everybody's back. So I'm happy to be back with all of you today. And another quick disclaimer, construction on my brand new record shelf is going to start tomorrow. So you'll see improvements to the scenery behind me, and especially for the live show. That'll probably take about 3 weeks. So content will be sparse in the meantime. I do apologize for that, but thank you for bearing with me. I promise the improvements will make everything just so much more enjoyable. In the meantime, though, we're going to kick things off for the week of July 28th with Post Malone and this new album, Austin. This is studio album number 5 for him and his follow-up to 2022's 12 Karat Toothache, a record that I opted not to cover because this is a guy that gets talked about quite a bit, I feel. It's one of my goals for this channel is to focus on artists that deserve to be talked about, but maybe aren't getting the attention that they deserve in those mainstream outlets. So it's interesting and a pleasure to be talking about him today, because over the weekend I noticed there wasn't a lot of coverage about this record. And he's a guy that, you know, in his 8 years or so of being in the spotlight has definitely endured quite a bit. I'm happy that he's still around. I would say overall, if you ask me if I'm a fan, yes. I think the biggest thing with my relationship to his music and the way that he builds albums is that he doesn't really focus on the construction of the album. This is a guy that's 28. He's making music in the digital age, excuse me. I feel a big part of that rolls off the age of the CD as well, where, you know, you were all of a sudden given like 78 minutes, 80 minutes now versus the conventional vinyl format, which gives you about 44, 45 minutes, depending on what you're doing. And so it's something that I struggle with, especially with a lot of younger artists out there. Morgan Wallen's one. He came up in conversation. This is a guy that I just, you know, the last 2 records, it's a lot of music. It just kind of feels like content dumps at that point. You know, hone in, focus, make those tough decisions. And so Post Malone's last record, 12 Karat Toothache, the thing that I really dug about it was that it seemed like he was turning in that direction of focusing on the construction of an album versus being a hit maker. And there's nothing wrong with that. But previous 3 efforts, they're all over 50 minutes, all featured a bunch of guest appearances as well, which Austin, I love that about it. You know, Austin's his first name. We're not talking about the city in Texas. This is an effort that, you know, it's his first album with no guest appearances. And I think that adds to the personal element that's going on here. I also want to talk about what he brings to the table stylistically. I would never, even on his first record, I would never classify this guy as a hip hop artist. A lot of people have called him a grifter, you know, any number of terms there with that regard. This is a man that's always made very pop driven music. Now there might be hip hop influences there, or influences of R&B or soul, or, you know, 80s influences. There's always been a lot at play in his music, even since day one. And so this, you know, to get to this point in his career with an album like this, where he's playing guitar on every single song, I think it's excellent. This isn't his rock and roll record. I read one critic that was like, don't call this album his rock and roll record. And I agree with that, because it's not. I'd say that more than anything, that pop flair is really honed in a delicate, chill manner. There's influences of R&B for sure, a bit of a hip hop influence, but a lot of 80s new wave, and, you know, even a little bit of like minimal post punk that's at work here. It's another thing I really enjoyed about the record is the level of minimalism and what he's working with here. And I like that he's dropping the auto tune. This is a guy that doesn't have the greatest voice in the world, but that doesn't matter. Guy behind me, I love Bob Dylan's voice, and I think Bob Dylan is so brilliant because he was able to make that instrument work for him in his music. Post Malone is a guy that I listen to these songs, and I love what he's working with as far as the vocal element and just hearing his natural voice. And he has such a propensity for the hook. You know, he writes really catchy melodies, really catchy lyrics, brings them together well. It's definitely one of his strengths, no doubt. The personal nature of this record definitely makes it appealing. I think that this is a guy that, still being under 30, has grown up in the spotlight, has dealt with a lot of criticism, especially his struggles with alcohol abuse. It's something that's really been at the forefront of his music, and certainly this new album is no exception. And there's a critic in Rolling Stone that was talking about how the collection of songs is pretty solid, but he doesn't feel like there's any resolution. Well, I feel like that's kind of a stupid angle when you're talking about a 28-year-old who's struggling with addiction. There isn't resolution. There's that's something that Post Malone is going to have to wake up and battle with every single day. But he has a family now. He has his. I believe he's married now. He might still be just engaged, but brand new baby. He lives in Utah, which I think trying to get out of the party scene and just chill out a little bit. I like that he's making all of these steps to correct things, to grow up and to mature and to be the man that he wants to be. It's cool to see. And I think that this record, it finds you in kind of that crossroads there of you know finding that new footing and being able to blaze a new path, but acknowledging that it's still difficult and that you wake up and there are constant things, constant struggles that need to be overcome. And so I dig that about the record. I don't think it's to this album's detriment that a lot of these songs he still leaves you feeling like he wants to party, because damn it, the dude probably does. He just recognizes that if he keeps on that path, he's not going to be around to make music. It's a sad thing to bring up, but there's some of his contemporaries, guys that in the last decade since his career has blown up, there's been guys that we've lost, women that we've lost, all sorts of entertainers. And it's tragic to see. So I love the turnaround from Post. My big criticism with this record, bringing up 12 Karat Toothache and 14 songs, 43 minutes, talking about how it seemed like a more focused effort. This is an album at 52 minutes, 17 songs. There's a couple songs towards the back end where this thing starts to linger a little bit. And I think if he'd made that tough decision to clip a couple of these tracks, because you can always put those on different records, this would be a much more focused and enjoyable effort, knowing that you don't have to deal with two pieces of wax. I think it's a big detriment to this effort, a really chill record that, I only want to do one turn on. I like the moments where the energy's up and you're getting good elements of pop, good elements of R&B, good elements of hip hop. But overall, this is a pretty chill, introspective record. It's a solid effort from him. I think he continues to grow as an artist, and this is an album that, fans of his early work might be put off by this, but maybe not. I think that being around for almost a decade now, a lot of you have grown up with Post, and in that situation, there's a lot here that may resonate with you, and you may just think that it's his best work to date. I'm not going to say that by any means, but this is a guy that I like. I like how he continues to tap in and expand on all of the different influences that drive what really is a very pop driven sound. I would say of all the people out there that I would compare him to as a contemporary, The Weeknd is probably the closest as far as just, I feel like the biggest drive behind both artists, really, Michael Jackson. You can disagree with me if you want, throw it down in the comments. Let's talk about these songs though. Don't Understand is your opening track, simple acoustic arrangement. Really like the delicate vocal, the vulnerability that's at display here, and it's got this feeling of like a 90s alternative track. This is something that, with the guitar and the mood, maybe think of like Alice in Chains, like a B-side, or like a Nirvana B-side, or it's a really cool song that immediately identifies the feel of what you're going to get from start to finish for this thing. Some great strings that work in as well on that song, and I like the way that they just kind of match the simple melody of the guitar. And again, that minimalism. I think it's one of the strengths of this record. Really, it's Post is doing a lot with a little on this thing. Something Real is your second track. Got a big gospel hook to open. Talking about being kind of minimal, this track is not in that category here, but I still like the way that this thing is acoustic driven, light percussion, and the bass is really nice. The verses go to this moody electric pop space. It's intense but breezy, but that chorus, that element. I like how he goes kind of big there with that melody. Chemical, your third track, you get this driving arpeggiated riff, simple bass. You get this like driving punk percussion that enters. I like the different nuanced feel there, coming from the rhythm, but still a chill feel that this song maintains. Nova Candy is your fourth track, big vocal and synth wash to open. The music drops and the vocal re-enters with more prominence. You get the beat that hits nicely, and this is going to feel kind of like more of that signature, post track that you may have gotten on previous records. Something that I think comes at a good moment, considering the different feel of this album. You're getting something that gives you some familiarity as a fan, especially you longtime fans, and I think that's important. I think that's a solid nuance there that comes at the right time. Morning is your fifth track, great vocal over light synth wash to open. I really like the simple beat that works in for another breezy track, and that's really the feel of this record. It's very mellow, very chill. This might be kind of like a Sunday brunch type of thing for sure. It's got that feel. The hook and the play on Morning is solid. I really like that lyrically. It's a fun element to this record. Too Cool to Die is your sixth track. I love the 80s new wave pop feel, really prominent on this track. It's executed brilliantly. And I really dig the harmonies that are at play on this track as well. Sign Me Up, your seventh song, keeps rolling with that 70s, that 80s new wave feel. But there's definitely more of a post punk vibe to this song. You get vibrant, bright synths to counter that. Great bass that's at play on this song. It's another fun track. Socialite is your eighth song. It is got this gentle acoustic riff, something that's very common on this record, and a groovy vocal. It's something that I feel the vocal opening up here is better than most of these tracks here. Heavy but catchy. Hook comes in. The harmony is great as well. Drums hit to match the groove in the vocal. This is probably one of the highlights on the record, in my opinion. Overdrive is your ninth song. Get this chill drum beat, minimal guitar, a little electric riff to play over that as well. And the bass has a really nice catchy bounce on this track. Back to that 90s feel. So I'm digging kind of that resurgence of that alternative feel. Light strings work in, and this is a guy that you talk about the fun little things that he can play with. This guy can whistle really well, and I love that about this track. It's a fun element to it. Speedometer is your 10th song. Fun, groovy sci-fi 80s feel. Talking Heads, like Pet Shop Boys, a little bit of like Devo on this thing. This is one of the more interesting and playful tracks on the record. I really enjoyed it for that reason. Hold My Breath is your 11th song. Simple acoustic arrangement, delicate vocal. You get this minimal percussion that builds in, and pretty little ballad. It comes at a good moment here as well, kind of like backing off the energy. The instrumentation swells on this thing for a big pop feel. And I really like that build in the song. You get strings in the coda. Really one of the more interesting tracks on the record, I'd argue. Enough is Enough, your 12th song. Light acoustic guitar, thick little bass to carry. Really dug the line there. Beat hits in the hook at about 45 seconds on this track. Second verse mellows. You get this kind of like double hook on this track. I really like the build on the first hook, and then you get a second hook, and that's it's a tough thing to do, and I think it's a track that displays one of the things that make him such a good songwriter. Whether or not you're feeling the execution, I love the play. The build, one hook off the other there is exceptional. Texas T is your 13th track. Heavy beat, you get this like light pulsating synth for like a kind of like a gentle industrial feel. Light cymbal that comes into play here that I really like the drive and the percussion on that there. Interesting track. Buyer Beware is your 14th song. You get this alternative acoustic rock, a little bit of electronics behind it. And then, and you get these synths that completely change this thing, and it catches this like really jaunty groove. Some unique songwriting here. I was talking about the length of the runtime here. I feel like the stretch of songs between like Sign Me Up, song 7 to like song 12, maybe a song or two could have been lost there, but on the back end of this thing, the track list becomes really fun and really unique. And towards the end here, like Landmine, Green Thumb, I like both these songs, but maybe one of these could have lost for the sake of the runtime. But Landmine, here's 15 track. It's like light, breezy acoustic arrangement, simple percussion. You get a little bit of hand claps there to drive. Big harmony that builds and then mellows to finish. Your penultimate track, Green Thumb, you get a pretty acoustic track. It's like thematically, I like what's going on here. It starts off, it's like a conversation about a lost lover with a dying flower, and how that that lover neglected the flower. I like the bass that works in, the sentiment overall in the track. I'd say Landmine. I brought up both those tracks. Maybe lose Landmine. I think Green Thumb is a cool song, and then Laugh It Off, gentle acoustic vocal intro, carries through the verse and the chorus. Percussion's going to hit on the second verse, and then Coda's going to go big, get this nice little hook with the guitar. It's a nice album finisher. Really, my only criticism is the kind of bloated runtime on this thing. I'm going to pass on the wax for that reason, finding it a little pricey. It's unfortunate, but I definitely would recommend streaming this thing. I think this is an album that displays an artist that has gone through a lot of personal growth. I think that growth is important just as far as him being here on this earth. It's a tragic thing that we see with a lot of entertainers. They lose themselves in substance abuse, and we lose them at a young age, and it's so unnecessary, and it's so tragic anytime it happens. So I'm glad that Post has been able to right the ship, and that he's working every day to keep his act clean, to keep himself together for his family, and ultimately his fans get to benefit from that. And he's the type of dude that is smart. And I think that, being out on tour, seeing the energy that's there with his live shows is, it's something that is going to hit him. And I'm really excited to see where his career goes and how he continues to develop despite the pass on this thing. Hope you enjoy this record, though. Hope you find this review helpful. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help us blow this project up in 2023, and stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.